You know, there's been a lot of hate and discussion being thrown at Steam over the whole idea of asset flips. And while I believe in an open platform where, good things succeed and bad things fail, I can understand and accept a sort of discussion over this and whether or not Steam should remove them. With that said, there is one point being constantly thrown about that I just cannot get behind. And that's the idea that asset flips are taking away visibility from more deserving games. That, I respectfully disagree. What's up guys, it's me Zero to my Kitsune, here to talk about asset flips and whether or not they are actually stealing visibility from other games. Now hopefully this will be a short video. I only have a couple of points to go through, so let's go ahead and get started with the first point, that asset flips honestly are not seen by the majority of consumers. This is a point that a lot of people who actually talk about the data behind asset flips tend to kind of throw out there and then forget about as they go on talking more about the negative aspects of asset flips. But in reality, that point kind of refutes the other points, as if the asset flips are not seen by the consumers, they can't really affect the sales as much as people who are talking about this are claiming. Now, one point brought up by the YouTuber Zarek Zahakaran in a video debunking, or I guess debating, some of the points by the popular commentary person Jim Sterling, was that when you are doing videos on these sort of negative games and subsequently buying them from the Steam page, you are telling Steam that you like these sort of games, so it shows up more and more in their feeds. That could be a reason why I think so many people who are concerned with asset flips feel that they are actually stealing sales, because they see them more because they're buying them and playing them and commentating about them more, which in turn tells the algorithms to give them more. But for the average consumer who probably just passes by asset flips, the Steam algorithm most likely doesn't send them games, because the algorithm honestly doesn't want to give people games that they don't want to buy. And coupled with the fact that most asset flips tend to have horrendous ratings, just straight negative or at best neutral ratings, the algorithm probably gives the commentator versus the consumer two completely different perspectives. But that is actually the algorithm's fault. And I think that leads into my next point, that I think developers are actually really having a tough time understanding, and that is that Steam has never been a good place to gather info on games. Now, while back in the day when it was a relatively closed platform, getting on Steam meant something, but at the same time it was harder for people to get onto Steam. A lot of indie devs that claim that asset flips are, keeping them from being seen on the Steam store page are conveniently ignoring the fact that back in what they would probably see as the good old days, they wouldn't have been able to get on the Steam platform to begin with. And in all fairness, I feel like this is an issue that I wish more people would be talking about instead of simply claiming that asset flips are stealing visibility. The whole idea that Steam is just a terrible place to market your games in general, with or without the asset flips. Whenever I found an interesting game on Steam, I would always use outside sources to verify it before even considering buying the game, because I would just get no good information from the Steam page itself. I would see a trailer and some pictures, because in all honesty, the Steam rating system is just horrific. Plenty of times I would see bad games get good ratings for terrible reasons, or good games get bad ratings because they did something to piss off the community, and this is something that Steam still doesn't really do much to fix. One of Steam's best innovations in this area was the curated system, but they didn't support it well enough. I do believe the curated system is good, because if you actually go out of your way to, follow certain curators, they will have their little mini reviews pop up right underneath the game, which actually does help the consumer if they followed a trusted curator or curator that just so happens to match their sort of interest in gaming. Another innovation that Steam kinda did good with but still hasn't fleshed it out well enough is the very existence of the discovery queue. It's a good idea in theory. You have the algorithm pick out 10 games that the player probably wants and sends them to them for them to rate. It's a pretty fast, efficient system. You can quickly go through like 30 or 40 games in just a couple of minutes. But again, this goes back to the algorithm. The algorithm is just not that good. When I go through my discovery queue, I do not see a lot of asset flips. But at the same time, I also do not see a lot of games that actually interest me. And that makes me wonder how Steam is actually gathering this analytical data on what a person likes, because I've been using the Steam client for years and I don't use offline mode that much. I do have a couple of friends who primarily keep Steam in offline mode to avoid, giving data they don't want to give. But even with the data I've given to Steam, it still constantly recommends me things like Train Simulator or sports games when they should be completely non-existent from my queue. Now, with me saying all these points on how bad Steam does when it comes to marketing their developers, I do want to say that I don't think Steam has a responsibility to give devs visibility. They chose long ago to simply be a warehouse where, you can buy close to any game from at this point. And I feel like that's a actual really convenient thing. Whenever someone's selling a game, you can just find it on Steam. That's nice and simple. But Steam constantly chooses to claim otherwise, saying that they're trying to help creators and they're trying to make sure plenty of new guys get seen every day, when in reality they aren't. So that actually falls onto Steam. They should really stop lying about that. Or if they're not lying about it and they genuinely do feel that this is a priority, they really do need to work harder at it. Because at the end of the day, I don't know very many people who actually use Steam primarily to rate and buy games. They always go to people on YouTube or people on Twitch to encourage them to actually buy the title. And that's a really important point that devs need to realize. They can't just throw a game on Steam and expect a ton of sales. They could back in the day where it was a closed platform, but then they wouldn't be able to be put on the platform. But now, in the current day and age, you can't do that. Even without asset flips, they'd still be competing against hundreds of titles coming out every month and consumers who just don't have a lot of time to browse. That's why I think the discovery queue was a good idea. It's fast, it's simple, and it gets you seeing a wide variety of titles. But in the end, simply seeing your title is not enough nowadays. People go into Steam with an idea on what they're going to buy, and simply seeing a title with an interesting image and a couple of pictures, that's just not doing it for them. There has to be some marketing involved. And marketing is the final point I want to really make here. Devs have the means to market themselves in ways that asset flips and terrible games just don't have. One example was I recently saw a Sid Alpha video, which was actually the inspiration for me to make this video, kinda as a counterpoint. And he brings up an example of Stardew Valley and saying that what if asset flips buried Stardew Valley underneath a pile of garbage and no one got to see what an amazing game that was. But a commenter in his video quickly pointed out that Stardew Valley had a publisher, and a relatively popular one at that, and they had a good deal marketing themselves, which helped the product be as successful as it was. And don't get me wrong, I hate big massive AAA industry publishers as much as the next guy, but you have to acknowledge their role in the industry and what they can do, as much of a deal with the devil as it is, as shown by Gearbox and We Happy Few. Publishers are there to help give more visibility to titles to make them sell better, while also adding in pre-orders and DLC and making strong recommendations to the developers to change it to make it more popular. Ugh. But generally speaking, publishers don't normally publish trash, with the exception of Life of Black Tiger. Yes, it can be said that publishers do publish shit games, or games with crappy business models, but they don't deal with absolute trash, games that shouldn't be played by anyone. And publishers aren't the only advantage that actual game developers have over trashy garbage asset flips. They also have the advantage of just not being shit, which means that they can advertise themselves much better on the internet as a whole. The internet is a huge free advertising space. I mean, right now it is. And you have a ton of publications, a ton of websites, YouTube channels, and individuals that can help sell your game for you that you don't even in majority cases have to pay for. You just need to reach out. Though keep in mind that if you're only reaching out to big massive channels like the Total Biscuits of the internet, they're not gonna be as inclined to work with your small project because they just have more work than time. Basically, what I'm saying with all this is that asset flips aren't a huge contributor to small games being unsuccessful. Bad marketing is. And ignoring this fact is making small developers roll the dice when it comes to releasing their product, as they release it on Steam, and then essentially it's just a flip of the coin whether or not the community around them notices it and supports it enough to become a raging success. And while success in our modern internet intertwined lives is now just a series of dice rolls to begin with, you can at least manipulate some of those rolls to be in your favor. It's never 100%, but there are things developers can do to give themselves a better shot at it. And before I go, let me point out that this video is not meant to badmouth devs who do think asset flips are the reason that their game didn't succeed. Those devs honestly have enough work on their plate just making the damn video game. But what I want my opinions today to convey, and yes, that's what they are, opinions, feel free in the comment section to debunk what I'm saying either with your own opinions or with actual statistical data. I'd love to see some stats on this. But what this video is trying to convey is that to all the consumers who play all these indie games, or the consumers to any medium, whether it be video games, YouTube videos, artwork, comic books, whatever, I want to say that you people can make all the difference in whether or not a product is successful, not even just by buying the product or supporting them monetarily, though that does help, but simply spreading your feelings about the product to people who don't know that they want that product. That makes all the difference. In this modern era, dedicated consumers are more powerful than any other force available. More powerful than Steam algorithms, more powerful than the best publishers money can buy, and those are the things that asset flips, they don't have. They don't have that at all. And to developers, fostering that kind of community can mean the difference between success and failure. Because who knows, maybe one day one of your random fans will decide to start a YouTube page and make your video game the cornerstone of their content. And with all that said, I hope I've made a compelling argument or at least clearly stated my opinions on this. Like I said, I'd love to hear opposing thoughts about this. But with all that said, I will see you guys next time. Later.